Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokemon Emerald video. To keep the trend going, today I will be using yet another Pokemon from Generation 2. This time it is an evolution from a Pokemon introduced in the first generation. Scyther was pretty good on its own right, but had some flaws mostly because of the typing. Today we'll see if a better typing and a different stat distribution will be able to let Scizor have a better run through the game. For the rules, I can only use my starter in combat. I can't use any items from my bag in battle. I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. It's always a bit surprising to see that Scyther and Scizor have the same stat total, but they are spread differently. I guess I am used to evolutions having more stats in total. For the early game, Scizor's typing is much better, considering that Steel can resist normal, and so most of the attacks are not going to do that much to me, just 1 or 2 HP each time. It's also way better for the first gym, but we'll get back to that later. The one thing that does not really change much between the two Pokémons is the move pool. While it is still quite shallow and we can only learn a few moves that are not normal type, hopefully that will be enough to get through the game easily. Mostly because at level 36 he learns Swords Dance, which is a very good move for these kinds of runs. Anyway, for Roxanne, we are going to have a considerably easier time than Scyther, mostly because our typing makes it so that their rock moves are only neutral on me, instead of being 4 times super effective. During the fight against Roxanne, I made a huge mistake and I accidentally overwrote Quick Attack with False Swipe. Since I was not using that move, I did not notice in time and I ended up saving after the gym, so that move is unfortunately gone. Other than that, the fight went quite well. Scizor learned Pursuit a while ago, which is a special move in this game, and even though my special attack is nothing great, it is still enough to do substantial damage to her rock types. Thanks to Focus Energy, I also got a couple of crits here and there, which allowed me to finish her off before running out of PPs for that dark move. Next up, I did the Pico stuff in the cave, and that's when I realized the false swipe mistake. To fix it, since I was not really confident going around with only Pursuit, I had to teach Cut. Cut is a pretty bad move, but that's the punishment for not paying attention. Unfortunately, it will stick in my moveset for a very long time, as the move deleter can be found only later in the game. Skipping Brawly, since I did not feel very confident with only Cut, even though his fighting attacks are neutral to me, thanks to my bug type resisting them. On the other hand, the 2 Team Aqua grunts in the port city are much easier and can easily be felled with the Cut in a couple of hits each. After defeating them, we are reached by their leader Archie, who speaks for a while, until eventually we are able to resume our journey. And after training a bit more against the trainers in the area, I can take on the rival in the next fight. Mei is a bit dangerous since her Combusken is a bit tanky and does a lot of damage with a simple Ember, but fortunately I can take her down in a couple of hits, and with that Pokemon gone, the rest of the team is much less threatening. After defeating her, we can make our way to Mobile, where there are a whole bunch of trainers to train against, and all of that leveling allowed me to learn Slash, our first proper decent move in the game. Once again, I was not very confident in taking on Watson with only that move, but leveling to 36 for Swords Dance was way too much. As I was expecting, Slash was not enough to two-shot Magneton, so I ended up being paralyzed even though I had the Cherry Berry equipped. This can often lead to tragedy, as the RNG gods are rarely in my favor. Not to mention that Magneton also knows Supersonic, and the Parafusion strategy is one of the worst in the entire game. I did not get completely unlucky, and I was able to defeat him with just a bit of HP left over. Once we can use Rock Smash out of combat, we can explore more of the region, until eventually we stumble upon the two teams arguing in Meteorfall Caves. After some talking, we are forced to go to the local volcano to stop Maxi from activating it, trying to wake up the legendary Pokemon Groudon. Of course, he is not so willing to change his mind, so we have to fight him to stop him. Since today I am using a physical attacker, the fights against the Team Aqua and Magma members are going to be a bit annoying, mostly because they're intimidates from my Tiena, but also the Camerapts can be dangerous with their fire moves. In this encounter, things went pretty smoothly, but you never know what the future holds. Like for example, the fight with Flannery, who specializes in fire types, so yeah, I lost to her, but only once, which was a bit surprising. Unfortunately, in the first fight, I was able to use Swords Dance only once, which was not enough to defeat her ace. In the second attempt, Numel gave me a free turn to set up with the Sunny Day move, and that was just enough to raise my attack high enough to the point where I can sweep the rest of her team. So even though I was left with only 10 HP, the fight went by quite safely. Now that we have Flannery's badge, we have to backtrack and take on Brawly, since I skipped him earlier, and thanks to all the extra levels and a good move, the fight against him was a little bit more than a joke. All of his Pokémons are one-shotted with Slash, and like that, the fighting badge is in our pocket. After acquiring all the first 4 gyms, we have to go challenge our dad for the normal badge. Usually Norman is quite scary, since his Pokémons can deal a lot of damage with their normal moves, but today, since I am part Steel, I can resist them, so this should be quite easy. The only thing I have to be careful about is the counter from Slacking, since that does not care about typing. Fortunately, I was careful this time and set up while he used that, and easily finished him off the next turn. Now that we have the normal badge too, we are also given Surf, which is not useful for combat, but can be used to explore the rest of the region. Eventually we stumble in the Weather Institute, where Team Admiral Shelley is holding some hostages. Even though her team is not very strong, I got a bit scared when I saw Swagger and started hitting myself. Fortunately, that does not last too long, and Scizor eventually gets through it and finishes off her Pokémons. Once we have defused that situation, we can resume our journey, only to be immediately stopped by our rival. Here I should have set up from the start, since her Pelipper is quite annoying and the rest of the team is not so frail. Fortunately, since she only has 3 Pokémons that are not fully evolved, Even with the base attack, that's more than enough to destroy her team. Next up, we have to defeat the Flying Gym headed by Winona. This might seem scary for a bug type, but remember we are part steel, so all of her flying moves are only neutral on me. I take the opportunity to set up against Tropius, since that is the least dangerous Pokemon on her team, and once I gain a lot of attack, I can go on the offensive and sweep the rest of her team with the Slash. Of course, Pelipper has to be the annoying one and stall me a bit with the Protect, but that does not save him for long, and after a little while all of her Pokémons are back in their Pokéballs and the Flying Badge is ours. After getting through the rainy part of the region, we can reach the next town, where we are once again face to face with our rival. This one is optional, and even though I do not need anything from the mall this time around, I still challenged May. Much like our previous encounter, there is not a whole lot her team can do to me. The only somewhat dangerous Pokemon is Combusken, but after it is defeated in one slice, you know the fight is going to end in my favor. After crushing May's dreams, we can climb the Pokemon Cemetery, and here we are given the Magma Emblem, who can be used to access the cave where Groudon resides. Of course, we arrive too late, and Maxie already woke up the legendary who flees. To vent off his frustration, Maxie ends up attacking us, and just like the previous fight with him, this is not exactly hard, but more frustrating. Because of the Intimidate, I cannot defeat the Mightyena in one hit, so he takes the opportunity to slow me down and confuse me. After reducing my own HP by quite a bit, I can snap out of it and sweep the rest of his team, so even though it was a bit scary, it was not so bad. And pretty much the same thing happens in the next fight. This one is against another one of Team Aqua's Admiral, and even though his team seems pretty weak on paper, just a Mightyena and a Golbat, because of the stat drops and confusion, this ended up being a bit scarier than it had any right to be. Anyway, after all of that ordeal, I take a lot of time to grind and also get the return HM, because our next fight is going to be against Tate and Liza. Even though this is a 2v1, this should not be too bad. I do not have any super effective moves against them, but that should not be a problem since I can raise my attack a lot with the Swords Dance. And a couple of lucky not misses from Steel Wings allow me to remove their Meteor Pokémons very fast before they can try anything nasty. Claydol ends up dealing a lot of damage with Earthquake, but that was a bit too slow on his part, and eventually I can defeat him too to earn the Psychic Badge. Of course, as you all know, next we have the fight with Steven against Team Magma. I do not think that the Camerupts in this fight in particular know any fire moves, so I should be somewhat safe on that front. On the other hand, there are quite a few Mightyenas and Crobat Golbats that know confusion moves like Swagger or Supersonic. Even though my defense is quite high, since I am raising my attack so much with the Swords Dance, I still end up dealing a lot of damage to myself in confusion. Here I end up being a bit lucky with RNG, as most of their attacks are targeted towards Metang, so he has to deal with the annoying RNG. Meanwhile, I can keep spamming attacks, and eventually we can clean their teams, and with that, Team Magma is reformed. After congratulating us for the success, Steven gives us the Dive HM, which is immediately needed to get down below the sea into the seafloor cave. Here we find the Team Aqua's leader, who is still convinced that his plan is a good one. We cannot allow him to get any further, so we end up challenging him. Even though his team is quite similar to Maxi and the other guys from the teams, here I get probably the worst luck out of all of them and hit myself quite a few times. That combined with their attacks brings my HP very low, but I do not end up getting defeated in the fight against him. Even though we won the fight, we lost the war, since both of the legendaries are now awake and are causing havoc amongst the region. So we have to go awaken Rayquaza from its slumber and ask for help in stopping the other two. He is way too nice and ends up fixing the problems in a very little time and saving us from ourselves. Once that situation is resolved, we can resume our badge collecting operation with the last of the gym fights. Juan should not be too much trouble. His Pokémons do not know any super effective moves on me, or at least I don't think so. And with a couple of Swords Dance buffs, my attack goes through the roof and is enough to one-shot and sweep all of his team. After defeating this gym too, we have finally obtained all the badges and can enter the victory road. Here we are immediately reached by Wally, who wants a serious challenge. His team is nothing to scoff at, as there are quite a few strong Pokémons, but unfortunately for him, they are a bit too slow to react and allow me to use Swords Dance a couple of times at the start of combat, and from there I can pretty much sweep the rest of the team. After defeating our secondary rival, sort of, and grinding a bit more in the victory road for a couple extra levels, we can finally get out of that cave and start the Elite Four. Here our first match is against Sidney, who is extremely annoying because he too relies on the Intimidate and lower your stats and RNG moves strategy. This time I get very lucky, as for whatever reason, my Tiena decided to go for Double Edge instead of literally anything else. And since I took that opportunity to increase my attack back to +1, the rest of the team is kind of a joke. I thought about stopping and using Sword Dance again, but that was not necessary. Phoebe is the second member, and once again, Curse is the main problem. Here I did not think that one Sword Dance was enough, but fortunately Dusclops tried to go for a second Protect, which failed, but that did not matter, since that bought me enough turns to set up a second Sword Dance, and with +4, Steel Wing was enough to one-shot everything on her team. The accuracy on that move is a bit dodgy, so I thought I would miss once or twice, but I got lucky enough to never miss either. So overall that was a surprisingly easy fight. Next up we have Glacia, and her Pokémons are Ice type, which is weak to Steel, but even if that's the case, I preferred to not use Steel Wing because of the previously mentioned not great accuracy. Instead I used one Sword Dance while her Celio set up the Hail, and from there I swept her entire team with a return. I was not expecting Wall Rain to fall in a single hit, but I had more than enough HP left over to take 1 or 2 surfs. So far, the Elite Four have been very easy, a bit more so than I was initially expecting. That might have made me a bit more careless, and I ended up getting punished for it in the fight against Drake. Here things did not go so well for me. There are a couple of Pokemons that have a flamethrower, and that moves hurts a lot. To make things worse, Shelgon is hard to set up against, since it can lower my speed with Rock Tomb, and if that happens, Flygon and then Salamence are faster than me and can hit me with a flamethrower before I can do anything. In the previous attempts, I also got unlucky and ended up being burned by flamethrower. This time around that was not the case, so I set up one more sword dance while he was healing, and that was just what I needed to get through the rest of the team, even though my HP was very low. After defeating all of his Pokémons, we only had the champion left, and since he too is only using water types, I was not expecting this fight to be too dangerous. As usual, I used the strategy of setting up against Wailord, but since I did not lower his HP first, his water spout ended up dealing quite a lot of damage to me. Seeing that I could not boost anymore, I went on the offensive, hoping that that single boost would be enough to get me through this fight. Until I reached Whiscash, which I realized was not that dangerous, and I would be able to survive one hit for sure. Setting up against him gave me even more attack, enough to offset Gyarados Intimidate, and just like that, we were able to finish off all of the members of his team and become champion of the Hoenn region. Ultimately, Scizor was quite an easy Pokemon to use, having a little trouble only against Drake, but the rest of the game was very easy and simple to get through. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all of that YouTube stuff. If you have any questions, feedback, leave it down in the comments, and I'll see you next week. Bye!